before Thanksgiving, and today I'm going to be making apple pie that has no gluten and no sugar for my sons. So you're going to need a couple pieces of equipment. You're going to need a big bowl. This is Grandma Alice's bowl, Neil's grandmother's bowl. You're going to need a pastry blender, which is this item, often used for making biscuits. You're going to need a rolling pin. Mine's in the freezer. You're going to need a pie plate. You can choose which size, depends on how much pie you want. Plastic wrap, you're going to want 2 sheets of that. This is shortening, you're going to need this. You're also going to need some kind of peeler. This is just a regular peeler. You could also use an apple peeler core slicer. Your ingredients are about 8 small apples or 6 big apples for the filling. The filling also has cinnamon and cornstarch, and the cornstarch is just to thicken up the juices and make it a little bit more smooth texture. For your crust, we're using the Bob's gluten-free biscuit and baking mix. That's available on Amazon. I use white rice flour to keep it from sticking, and I'm going to just use this regular old Crisco for buttering up our pan so that our crust doesn't stick. So we're going to start with that step. I like to use a paper towel and get a big blob of shortening on the paper towel. This keeps my hands from getting gross, and it does a pretty good job of getting it on there nice and thick. And I make sure to get it down into the corners and up on the edges and into the bottom, like that, okay? And the nice thing is you can throw this away and you're all done with that step. I already took the time to do most of the apples, but I was going to show you just how I like to do them. So obviously you're going to peel. Around here nothing really goes to waste. There's a little bit of a fight between chickens and horses for peels and cores when I make a pie. When the kids were little, they would also sit around and eat all of the apple slices and a lot of the peels as I was making this. This is also sort of the way that we make applesauce goes the same way. So as you can see, I got a ton of these, which I'll take out to the animals when I'm done and make everybody happy. The way I like to cut my apple is I cut 2 side chunks, and that makes it flat and easy to deal with, and you can see where the core is. Set aside, and then I'm cutting these about 1/4 inch thick. That way they don't get too mushy and turn into kind of an applesauce when you start cooking. So I used about 8 small apples today. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here's what 8 small apples look like all cooked up. I didn't cook them until they're totally mushy, just until they're a little bit soft, because of course they're going to bake a little more in the oven. Then I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, and this is just to thicken up what's going on there. And it doesn't have to be super duper precise. Do your best. And then when you stir that in, you want to be really delicate. Otherwise you end up smashing up the apples and turning them into sauce. So gently just sort of pushing them from the center into the middle. And it may not look like it's thickening right away, but what it will do is it will take the wetness that's down at the bottom from steaming the apples, and it will kind of turn it into this yummy apple gel. Okay, and then we're just going to set those guys aside because we won't need them until we have our crust. Now, working with a gluten-free crust is really challenging. I already put the cinnamon in also, I was going to tell you that. Because it's so sticky and there's no gluten to kind of make it stretchy. So we employ a couple of techniques that help with this, which is always using super cold butter. I actually put the rolling pin and the cutting board I'm going to roll it out on in the freezer too, just so that in the process of me mixing things up, it doesn't melt the butter and then turn the whole thing into a pile of grossness. So this is going to look really rustic because, well, it just is. It's hard to work with this kind of a crust. So this is my pastry blender. I'm going to use this, my butter, and I'm going to take 1 whole cube of butter as it goes in here. in the fridge. I'm also gonna grab the cold water our water coming out of our sink is not cold, so I went ahead and put 2 cups of water in the fridge. I'm not gonna use all that, but just having it on hand makes it so you're not scrambling trying to get more water. So I unpeel that. And then I take my pastry cutter and I just basically am cutting this butter, literally, with the pastry cutter. It's like 4 little knives next to each other. And I just want to cut that up until the size of peas. It's gonna take some cutting in different directions, turn the bowl, turn the cutter. You're gonna notice that it gets a little bit gummed up in the cutter, so you wanna just kind of push that off without touching it too much and melting it with the warmth of your hand. And just sort of push it back down in there and keep working with it. It's gonna be messy. That's how it is every time. It involves sweeping or vacuuming every single time I make a pie. Also, nobody's allowed to talk to me when I make a pie because I have to concentrate because there's such a short amount of time that the crust works well for rolling out. So, we're getting close. My pieces are probably about the size of marbles, so I'm gonna just cut a little bit more. The next section, I'm gonna be adding the water as I work through it, but I'm gonna add it really slowly because if I add too much, it's gonna end up turning into sort of a paste, and that's not gonna work well for what we're doing. So that looks about right. Get all that butter out of there and into the bowl. You can kind of see what's going on with that. I'm gonna grab a fork, keeps my hand clean for a second at least. As I add the super cold water, I'm just gonna put a little bit in and just sort of get it mixed and combined. In it goes. Still just kind of sticky, which is to be expected. Right now it's kind of in pieces, but it needs to be a little bit more together. And it's good to turn the bowl, scrape everything towards the center, because it's kind of hard to tell if there's dry stuff underneath how much more liquid you need. You really want to make sure that it's combined and sticking together. Otherwise, when you roll it apart, it's going to crumble worse than it already is. It's already going to be a little on the crumbly side. Yep, it's starting to come together. It's going to need a little bit more cold water. This is super exciting to watch. Just kidding. Just trust me, it's really exciting to eat from what I understand, so it's totally worth the effort. Okay, so it's starting to kind of come together in the bowl into a blob. That's a good thing because it's not going to fall apart quite as easily. So my next step is going to be to get out my rolling pin and my cutting board. I like to use a big wooden cutting board for rolling this out in case I have to do drastic measures in flipping the whole cutting board over. Sometimes that happens if it's really falling apart on me. While I get that prepared, I'm going to set this in the freezer just so that it stays cool and the butter doesn't melt. So I'm going to switch out. Cutting board. It's been in the freezer for all morning. And Kay from the Mystery House's rolling pin. And then I really like to roll out onto plastic wrap because it's easier if I need to lift the whole pie crust up. So I set that on. If I can get it a little static free and get the corners tucked under, all the better. And I take a lot of rice flour. If you use more of the baking mix, it's not going to help you. It's just going to make it stick. So you really want to have rice flour for this. And then I'm going to prep my second sheet of plastic wrap so that when my hands are sticky, I can just grab it without smearing it up with the pie crust. Okay, so this guy, you know how plastic wrap goes. All right, this guy's gonna wait for us over here, as flat as possible. Okay, my pipe roller is gonna need flour as well, so I'm keeping this close by because you never know how much you're gonna need. I'm gonna grab my dough out of the fridge and toss this fork. I'm not gonna need it, I guess. Actually, let's use the fork and then my hands will stay a little cleaner. All right, so out it goes onto this super floured up sheet, okay, like this. And then, set this guy aside. I'm gonna pour a bunch of this on top. Okay, and then I'm gonna take this second sheet, and this is a new trick that me and Martha Stewart figured out recently. And then I'm gonna roll it between the two. And I'm really delicate with it because it's a little bit of a finicky pastry. So, and maybe I don't roll it as thin as I would if I was making a gluten crust. Back in my old life when I ate gluten, I used to make some apple pies based on my grandma Stenmo's recipe. And I definitely was able to roll it thinner. I also would make a top crust. And now when I make an apple pie, I don't make a top crust because the gluten-free crust is really heavy, like a brick. And you really don't need crust on the top and crust underneath. So this is about how I would like it to be. And then here comes the part where usually if anybody's around, I send them outside or tell them they can't talk because it gets real tricky real quick. So I'm gonna try to peel this off and see what happens. Hopefully it just whoosh, peels right up. Great. Then here comes the magic moment of flipping this into the pie plate and hoping that that all works well. So we're just gonna, sometimes you gotta just go for it in life, right? So 1, 2, 3, there we go. Like a boss, into the pan it goes. Okay, now coming from, this is what it's looking like now. I like to, if I can, and if it's working well enough, grab a fork. You need a lot of rice flour for this, so I've got a bunch on the table, and I like to just kind of, it's like literally every time you touch the pie you need to get more rice flour or you'll just start pulling the pie up with you. But I'm just crimping down the edges, A, to make it slightly more attractive. Not gonna be an attractive pie, it's very rustic. And then B, it is really, helps smash it down just so that it will stay there, right, as I pour the stuff in. So here comes my apples, which have thickened up with the cornstarch in there. Now I take those guys and gently pour them into my prepared crust and get all that yummy syrupy goodness in there. Lay it flat like that. Okay, and then looking pretty good. Here's my recipe secret. I take a little more butter. Something about this, I'm not exactly what. It goes down into the sauce and the bottom crust and makes it just a little bit better. So I take these thin slices of butter and I lay them all over the pie. Okay, so at the beginning of this process, I should have told you to preheat the oven to 425, which I totally forgot to do, but you're gonna have to take my word for it, okay? So I won't be able to show you what the pie looks like when it comes out of the oven because that would take a long time and I don't know how to edit videos without Rowan here. But this is what my pie looks like going into the oven. It's gonna go in for 15 to 20 minutes. I'm gonna keep checking it. I probably start checking it at 13 minutes. Anyway, that is how you make a gluten-free, sugar-free apple pie.